Hiya, welcome back to part 3 of our Gothic orchestral cue. Now this time we're going to mix and master this into different stems. Now if you haven't seen the video on how I created this template, it's somewhere over there. What I can do is unhide the reverb and stem tracks that were already set up. The first step I'm going to do is go through and I'm going to make sure I have set any EQs on any of the instruments, removing any frequencies I don't want or boosting those that I think bring out the sound a bit more. Once I've done that, I'm going to color code everything into groups because ultimately I probably want about 6 stems. That's about the most that a music library needs to take from you. Obviously do whatever the music library is asking for, but I'm going to group things together so we've got similar instruments on the same stem. I definitely want the melody to be on its own stem. So for example, the church organ may well end up being on its own. I'm going to EQ, go through and color code and group all these instruments into hopefully about 6 different groups. See you when I've done that. Right, so I've gone through and I've grouped the instruments into different sections. I do have 6 of them. I've managed to put all these 5 together because of the way they come in and out. They work as a synth stem on their own. Then I've got bass on its own. I'm going to separate out church organ and the voices as separate stems because they do work quite differently in the track and you might not want to put them together. Then I've got the percussion, and then finally the effects stem will be the last one. So what I need to do now is unhide the reverbs and the stems. First job is to rename them. So the first one will be vocal reverb and so on, and then we'll get to vocal stem and so on down there. Once that's happened, I then need to go into the mixer, and at the moment all the instruments are going to stereo out. That's incorrect. The instruments need to go to the stem they are aimed at, so the vocal scrapes will go to stem 1, which will have been renamed to vocal stem, and I'll assign all those to go to the correct place. I will also be adding in the sends because they will need to go to the correct reverb. Not everything is going to need reverb on it. For example, here we already have chromaverb to mold this sound actually as a plugin on the channel, so it's unlikely I'm going to need any reverb for that. But what I will do is get it ready because I'll do them all at the same time. So this will be the 4th reverb. So we'll go down and they will all be assigned to go to the 4th reverb. Then if I choose to add more reverb, I can, but I could quite happily just leave it alone. We've got the instruments will be going to the correct output. The sends for each instrument group will go to the correct reverb stem, and we'll have them all labeled up nice and ready to go when I come back. Well, there we go. All the instruments now go to the correct stem, and they've also been routed to their own individual reverb, which I have added a little bit to, apart from the synth section, which I've left alone because as I was going through and putting those sounds in, I did actually think about the atmosphere they're in. For example, putting that chromaverb into the lead echo track. When you're going through and listening to these stems, remember, because you've changed the output from the stereo out, you now need to have the stems on input monitoring mode to be able to hear them. The next step is to do the little bit of magic, which is take them out of input monitoring, put them into record mode, hit the record button, and watch the stems pop out. See you in a second. Hey, there we go. All our stems ready to go. I'll say it again. Don't forget to leave the recording going until absolutely all the sound has gone, including all your reverbs. We can now take things out of record mode and we are set to create our main mix bounce. I should probably say the reason we're doing this is because it's very easy for me to now create different mixes. To start with, I would do the whole mix and bounce that as a full mix to send to a library to see if they like it. Then they're going to come back and say, actually, I need a drum and bass mix. So what I can do in this case would be take the bass and the percussion stem and just bounce that. So it's a very quick process to do. The other thing is you are protecting yourself and future-proofing yourself in case any of the instruments you used suddenly stop working. Because you've got this stored as audio now, it doesn't matter if any of these instruments suddenly run out of subscription or stop working. You can still manipulate the audio, and it's entirely possible that sort of thing happens if a library comes back to you and says they really like the track that you've created, but can you just take the organ out, for example. For me now, that would be really easy. If one of the synths had stopped working in the meantime, it would be very difficult to reproduce the same mix and take the organ out. So that's why we do it. The final step before we master is to make sure that we set the cycle range that we want. So we need to find the end point of the audio. And for that, I will show the output track of the stereo out. I will put in a MIDI region and I will automate the volume to fade out to 0. And we will also move the starting marker to just before where the audio begins. Let me do that, and I will then click Mastering Assistant to see what that does. And there you go. Logic Mastering Assistant has done its thing, gone through the mastering chain, added a few tweaks and got us up to -1 dB. That's it. I'm going to play it for you as an outro, but don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye for now.